Welcome all. It is a two-man booth today, as we don't have Drew with us for now, but he'll be back next week. Right now, it is Snyder and I here to break down an 11-game NFL slate that we have ahead of us on this Sunday, and then a Sunday night football game that is actually a pretty decent one. This is the first time, Snyder, I'll admit, look, if the Bengals aren't going to make the playoffs, I hope the Chargers put up 42, right? I honestly, if I had to nominate a second favorite team this year, it would be the Chargers. But we get a Chargers-Bengals Sunday night football game. Last week, we saw how just amazing Lamar was against the Bengals. So hopefully Herbert can recreate that. Snyder, how are you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing all right. We got a heck of a sports day going on here. We got a lot of college football, some UFC going on, and diving into NFL now. So it's going to be a great slate of NFL games tomorrow, like three super really good games. You got the Ravens and the Steelers, the Chiefs and the Bills, and then the Chargers Bengals at night. So I think it's going to be a great day of football. And the pricing here is a little tighter. It's a little tougher, which isn't a bad thing, I don't think. It's kind of fun for tournaments and stuff. Kind of helps you get out of your comfort zone a little bit. You got to make some tough clicks in there. You can't just jam all the good plays, which is fun to do at times. But I think we got some good spots to attack here this week.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys with like red flags who are garnering a bunch of ownership. Like Audric Estime, we'll get to him. He'll probably be like the 9th or 10th game that we talk about since the Broncos were one of the last games. 405 on the slate. Audric Estime got a lot of work last week. It's Sean Payton's offense. There's 3 running backs in that system. Javonte Williams had 1 carry, I think, last week. You're not going to convince me that Audric Estime is locked into that workload. And if he's going to be one of the highest owned players, there's leverage fading him, or there's pivots away from him, even though he's 4,500. Same thing with Kayshon Boutte. Even though I think that you look at a guy like Boutte, the Patriots kind of, with their press conferences talking to the offensive coordinator, they are very much set with those guys being the wide receiver group who played last week. And we'll talk about them in just a second because they are the first game. Snyder, this one should be a good one, and we're just going to go ahead and dive straight in. 11 games using Saberson that we're going to be using for main ownership. Like I always say each week, 90 minutes before is the best time to use Saber. Actually, checking on the ownerships. Last week, they had Purdy below 10%. He actually crept up to 16%, and it was Herbert who was 10% owned. So if Drew was here, you guys could decide on a punishment. We got to just delay that till next week since Brock Purdy was my play of the day, and he was way too chalky for that to be the case. Snyder, Rams and Patriots are our first game here. The Rams last week, they didn't get the job done against the Dolphins. They didn't really look that great. I actually thought I think we'd see a little bit more from Kupp and Puka. Puka was all right, but had some drops there too in the first half. I think the big surprise here, and this one's going to be kind of a theme moving forward, Colby Parkinson was straight benched 2 weeks ago. What that has done is it's created Davis Allen to have this tight end number 1 role in Los Angeles, at least until Higbee gets back. And this could be the theme moving forward. Davis Allen is projected for about 16% ownership, Snyder. If that shows you how tight pricing is, a guy who just got basically his first start of his NFL, was it his first start of the NFL career last week? Right, first one of the season at the very least, is going to be a very chalky value option. Also have Kyron Williams in this game, Puka, Kupp. We talked about Boutte being one of the higher owned guys on the slate in general at 3,500. Snyder, break this one down for me, please.
Yeah, I think we got some interesting spots here, especially with Boutte being one of the potentially the highest owned cheapie out there. He's going to see at least 20% ownership, it looks like. I'm not sure I can click that. I mean, he's only hit 10 points once this year, 10 points or more once this year. He's seen 6+ targets the last 3 weeks, but I mean, that's resulted in 7 or 8 points. I don't think that's going to get it done for you. And if that ownership's going to be that high, I think I'm going to be off of him and look for some other pivots and stuff in that range. Just kind of cutting the head off of it right there. But I think even if you go to another guy on that team, I mean, Demario Douglas is $1,200 more. And I think he's got much bigger upside. I mean, he's at least hit the double-digit mark 4 times this year. He's seeing 14 targets in the last 2 weeks. Kind of going under the radar a little bit. So if I was going to run it back with the Patriot, I think I may go to him at 4,700 as the pivot there on the same team and such there. But on the Rams side, I think Puka's the tournament guy I'm going to look to in some tournament teams. I think his ownership should be down a little bit. 14 targets last week. He had 9 in that first game back. And then he had 4 targets right away in that game against Seattle, but then he got ejected early in that game for punching a guy. So came back strong last week, 9 for 98. I think he's got that 7 to 10 catch upside, almost a floor, almost a 7-catch floor this year, almost when he's been in there the whole time. 7,300. So I'm going to be on some Puka for the Rams. I don't think I'm going to get the Kyren. He's not going to see much ownership, maybe 10, 15% or so, something like that. But he's kind of taken almost like a backseat a little bit. He's only had 100 yards total on the ground once this year. And since Coop and Nakua came back in the last couple of weeks, he hasn't even topped 15 DK points in the last 2 weeks. So I'll probably be off Kyren. I like some other running backs, definitely more. Ramondre, ODB talked about him on the Print Factory as a potential tournament play. That's even another pivot off of Butte for the Patriots. 20 points in 2 games. Didn't do much last week. Had 20 attempts, though, last week for 74 yards. But that was about it there. Didn't find the box or anything. I think he's fine for like the Millie Maker tournaments that are 6,100, but definitely not like a 3 max, 20 max type guy for me. But I really don't see much in this game. I think it's going to be kind of slow. I don't mind the Rams defense, though. They've got the 10th best defensive line going up against the worst offensive line in the Patriots. So I think the Rams defense is something that I'm going to get to some at 3,200. It's a good price tag. And they've hit 10-plus points 3 of the last 5 weeks and put up 22 against Seattle a couple weeks ago. And then 17 against the Raiders and 10 against Green Bay. So I think the Rams defense may be one of my best plays in this game.
I like it. And Snyder, when you brought that up too, just talking about, Kayshon Boutte, why he's shot, right? We talked about how pricing is very, very tight compared to usual. Then I decided to look at the most recent routes ran last week. Most importantly, just like last week. And he is leading the wide receiver room by a decent margin. And that's one of the biggest things with him too, is that it looks like his routes are safe. So if I'm going to paint a picture for him, I can kind of see it that way. Look, the last 2 weeks, he's ran the most routes in the Patriots. Last week, Kendrick Bourne was a healthy inactive. Not inactive. He was just a healthy DNP, basically a scratch. And they talked about, well, maybe that'll motivate him. We want some other things. I thought I would be interested more in Demario Douglas, like you mentioned, or more like a Jalen Polk. But those guys didn't even run that many routes. They ran half the routes of Kayshon Boutte. So when I'm looking at that, I'm like, man, what do I do with him? And I'm not going to throw him away, even though I kind of had that plan. I do think there's going to be plenty of pivots moving forward. But when we're talking about direct leverage, this Patriots wide receiver room might just be a stay away at that point, because that is just gross. It is 26 routes for Boutte. The closest wide receiver, I think, was Douglas with 15, which that's inexcusable. I mean, he is definitely their most effective playmaker, and I don't know why he's running only half the routes of Kayshon Boutte. I thought the rumor was that he would actually play a lot more than just a slot too. But, maybe in a trailing script, that could be the move, because we do want to attack this Rams defense a little bit. They're not great. I do like them as a tournament option, because it doesn't matter how many points you give up for DFS purposes, right? All that matters is if you can create turnovers, get sacks, and basically fluke a score. But when I look at this Rams defense, you just saw what the Dolphins did last week, and they weren't even that good. I like this Patriots team with Drake May. Genuinely with Drake May, I kind of get a little bit excited about watching it. I think I can be talked into potentially not playing May, but going into a mini stack of Puka with Ramondre Stevenson, or a Puka with Kayshon Boutte. This game could have points in it. And like I said, with Drake May taking over, the Patriots have been 10 times better. They still have a 20-point team total. The Rams are 24.5. There's a decent points. For a Patriots game with a total inside, just over 44 or whatever, that's not bad. This game, I don't want to completely sweep it under the radar for that reason. I think otherwise, Ramondre Stevenson being just 11%, this game does have a lot of ownership in it. And I think a lot of people kind of have that same thought. I'm going to keep a tab on Drake May, though, because 13% right now is probably a little too high. And is that just because people can stack Boutte with him, since he's one of the most chalky receivers, Snyder? Hunter Henry, I guess, would be there too.
Yeah, I think Boutte is just the guy all the optimizers and such is running through. He's the cash guy that's going to kind of spill in the tournaments, it looks like. Just when you run all the teams, even when I ran some teams before this show started there just to see where kind of everybody was at. I also seen a lot of like double tight ends today too, just trying to save salary and such as well. So I think Boutte is just more so the salary saver. The projections are pushing him into a lot of teams. I think there's potential that can cash. He'd probably be like 50% owned, and some smaller single entries. I think he'll probably be like 35% potentially.
Yeah, it's interesting. And the double tight end is a good point too. And it kind of brings me up to the last thing I'll talk about in this game, Davis Allen being 2,500.
Yeah.
Look, Davis Allen was fine, like for min price on the showdown slate. We loved him on the showdown slate. I think almost all of RPS was very high on him, and he ended up being very effective. But it also should be known, I think he had like 3 or 4 catches on the last drive alone. So like it wasn't like his six catches were completely in the flow of the game. He had like 3 catches until like the last drive of the game. Like I am completely okay with punting though. If you're going to punt a position, punt tight end, 2,500 don't matter. That's why I'm going to keep and be very happy with Davis Allen in this sense, because he is getting the most snaps. He did have 9 targets last week, but I don't want to just like, oh man, he's a lock because he's mid price. And I just ran some teams too, Snyder. I just did 5,000 in SaberSim. Again, code RPS15, 15% off your first purchase here at Run Pure Sports. If you did want to check out SaberSim, if I just did projected score of these 5,000 teams, it's a lot of this game. Just a lot of this game. It's 65% Boutte, 30% Allen, 25% Puka, 20% Henry. And this is just an allotment of, the top 20 teams that I just did. So yeah, we'll keep tabs on this game, but we'll move on to a story that just broke. And this one was funny too. I thought the exact same thing when I read the notification on my phone, Steven. Why would the Jags leak that they'll fire Peterson, especially against the Lions? Like, on the road in Detroit. Hey, Doug, you're going to get fired if you lose this game. Well, sick. I got a backup quarterback. Like, I don't think Peterson. I thought he'd get canned 2 weeks ago, but let's be honest here. They're kind of giving the short end of the staff. Why didn't you just fire him at the end of last week? Like, you're just throwing him to the wolves here. I mean, hey, if you lose this double-digit dogs in Detroit against arguably the best team in the NFL, you're fired. Snyder, when I looked at this game, I immediately thought Lions route, right? We know what the Lions do. We know who's going to get the ball from them. You know how effective David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs can be. However, the way to kind of approach this, and this is another thing, the Jaguars have been one of the worst passing defenses in the league, and it hasn't been close. And I question it if it's like a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown, Snyder, because 8K is kind of up there for him, and he hasn't been producing at a very high clip because he hasn't had to, and they probably won't have to against the Jags either. But I do want to bring up Jameson Williams, a guy who's going to be like literally 1% owned is what they're saying. Big playability. You can take the top off this Jags defense. Like Jameson Williams might be my favorite Millie tournament option of this game, Snyder. Some other guys getting ownership, Brian Thomas, double-digit ownership, ETN, and then the rest are just Lions. Goff is even projected. No, actually, my bad. Got that confused. Just Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, double-digit ownership in this one. What do you think?
Yeah, he definitely don't have to talk me into playing some Jameson this week. He's one of my favorite players coming into the league. Had that huge upside at Alabama. I played him a lot early in the season. He had a few touchdowns early in the year. He had some pretty big games there. Came back last week in that showdown slate against the Texans. Only caught 3 of his 5 targets, kind of working him back in, but he's definitely got that home run threat that could just torch this Jags defense. I usually don't like to back like big favorites like this betting wise, but I think we're going to see Detroit just unload on these poor fellas coming off of Goff's 5 interceptions last week. I think Goff's going to look to rebound here. I think they're going to put Goff in some good situations to kind of rebound him with that poor performance from him last week. I know a couple of those interceptions really weren't his fault. I mean, I think one of them might have been a Hail Mary. Another one could have been a tip ball or something like that. But 5 interceptions is 5 interceptions. So I really like Jameson in tournaments as well. I think St. Brown is a strong spend up at receiver. He shouldn't see that much ownership, I don't think, with a lot of the RBs that everyone's going to look to pay up for. So his ownership should be capped to some degree. And he scored a touchdown in like the last 8 games, I think, St. Brown has. So they're kind of keeping that trend going. So, yeah, I like St. Brown a lot. I think I'm actually going to set a rule at least one Lions player in every team I build this week as well, because I like Gibbs' upside, 7,300. He's got that quick break upside that can just torch a defense as bad as this. The Jags have given up some big games to running backs and receivers this year, so I think Gibbs has the upside to go for 100 plus and 2 touchdowns like we saw him do against Minnesota a few weeks back when he put up 35. But he's been consistent all year, at least getting to like 16, 17 points for the most part and showing that upside a couple times. So I definitely want Gibbs in my portfolio this week. And then I think, St. Brown and Jamison are strong. And it looks like Laporta is questionable or is going to be out. But I looked at Brock Wright, but I was expecting him to be in that Davis Allen camp there at 2,500, but he's listed at 3,300. So I think that's
the state of the economy. 3,300 Brock Wright, man. I'm shocked by that too.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be off of Brock Wright then. But if I'm looking to spend up on defense, you could go to the Lions at 3,800, but I think I'll probably just stick to my normal cheaper defenses though.
Yep, I like it. Lions defense 3,800. It's going to be I would honestly say very contrarian on this slate. Even though they're the biggest favorite on the slate, even though the running backs are going to be popular, people are not going to want to spend up at defense today. That is very much for sure. Richie, I'm not going to say I hate it just because we have seen A-Chain and Mostert do it last year and absolutely nuked the slate. However, personally, I never do that, especially on an 11-game slate. Like on an early slate, like where it's just 8 games, I think you can make the case for it. But hey, I'm not going to say anything bad about running backs in a 31-point team total as double-digit faves, and we know how much Campbell loves to run the ball down their throats. Snyder, you did a good job breaking it down. I think I don't really got anything else to add. I mean, 5,200 Evan Ingram is interesting because he could be like their leading target getter. Brian Thomas should get more looks. I mean, the thing to note about the Jaguars going against the Lions, it's very much a pass funnel. Like, they're going to have to throw the ball against this Lions team. Mac Jones isn't great, but he's serviceable. I think Brian Thomas and Evan Ingram are the only two that I even have any interest in. And then on the Lions side of the ball, like I said, Jameson Williams, 5,800, would not shock me at all if he had 5 catches, 100 yards, and a touchdown tomorrow. And he's not going to be on at all. And that's probably a guy I'm probably going to ladder as props just because it only takes one play. This Jags defense is very sad, especially in the secondary. I think that'd be my difference maker. And you're right. Sam Laporta being out should have led with that. That's big news. I mean, that can only help these other weapons for the Lions here. And hopefully he's back soon. All right, so we're going to move on. Vikings and the Titans here. So this one is interesting, Snyder. It has no ownership in it, really. I'm kind of shocked by that. The Titans defense has been okay. They weren't really great against the Chargers last time out, but they were serviceable, especially in that first half. The Titans defense, though, at 2,300 is the highest owned piece in this game. It is actually projected to be very chalky, somewhere in the mid-teens there. Calvin Ridley has been a garbage time hero, catching a fourth quarter touchdown late on last week against the Chargers. He also had a great first quarter, so I guess he's not just a garbage time merchant a few weeks ago. Ridley is also the second highest owned player in this game. Westbrook Akine also fits the bill at 3,600, projected around 7% ownership. That feels a little bit high for someone like that. Snyder, anyone in this game? I mean, I didn't even talk about the Vikings because they're not getting much ownership at all. Like, Justin Jefferson, the best wide receiver in the game, is not going to be owned more than 3%. That's surely got to interest you a little bit, right?
Yeah, I actually think potentially the best play on the whole slate is in this game, actually. And I think TJ Hawkinson is like 2K underpriced for what he's came back to. I mean, last week, 9 targets, caught 8 of them for 72 yards. I mean, we were used to paying, in the 6Ks for him last year when he was in peak form there. 4,700 is a gift, I think, for Hawkinson on a slate where we need some value, some mid-range value. I think Hawkinson is potentially the best play on the slate. So he's definitely going to make my main team. I really like Hawkinson in this spot. I know Tennessee's got a pretty tough defense. Both of these are pretty tough defenses with a total under 40 in this game. But the Titans have given up some big games to tight ends this year. They gave up 24 DK points to the tight end position when they played the Lions, 15 to the Patriots, 12 to the Colts. So they've given up some games to tight ends. So I think Hawkinson is a great play in this. Jefferson is always in play as an upside Millie maker type play. Calvin Ridley is actually he's been getting like the third highest target share in the NFL based off of his team's target share. I mean, he's going to get 8 to 10 targets in this game. He did have a couple of touchdowns last week. He's put up 25 points in 2 of the last 3 weeks. So I think Ridley is fine for like a million maker too. If you want to run like a skinny or a little mini stack here with Ridley and Hawkinson or something like that, I think that's viable. But this Minnesota defense is going to be coming after Levis super hard. I mean, they're going to blitz him nonstop, so he's going to have to make some quick decisions. And maybe that just comes down to lobbing up a couple passes to Ridley. But definitely my favorite play on the slate is probably Hawkinson. And I think you can play Jefferson in tournaments, and Ridley's fine in tournaments. But that's about it for me in this slate. I know Aaron Jones is questionable, I believe, and Cam Akers is there at 4,600. I just don't trust Cam Akers to shoulder a load. So if he becomes chalk, I would be off of Cam Akers the last time he was chalk as well.
Yeah, the last time he was chalk, that was in Houston, right? Yeah. So I think that's the funny part is he'll be chalk for 2 different teams if that was the case. Aaron Jones, I'm kind of expecting him to play.
Yeah.
I will battle back, though. If I got a 4,600 starting running back on this slate, I'd probably take it. That's not to say like Ty Chandler wouldn't split evenly.
Yeah,
and I think that can kind of go over people's head where, look, Ty Chandler could easily be involved in like a 50-50 split where they're alternating each drive and stuff. I'm going to go to the Coach Speak Index. Again, one of the best accounts on Twitter. They also have a Patreon that you can get access to for a database for, all this Coach Speak stuff. I'm going to see if they mentioned anything about Aaron Jones potentially being out. Is doing well. I think he may be a little bit more limited, but expecting him to progress as the week goes on. That was 3 days ago. So I don't know. It'll be very much up in the air. He did have some praise on Ty Chandler as well. So I don't think it's going to be a clean 70% workload for Cam Akers. It could definitely be very much closer to 50-50 if that is the case. And I'm glad you mentioned Hawk because Hawkinson after the first drive last week, Snyder, you know what his reception prop live was on DraftKings Sportsbook? It was 3.5, and the dude did it in one drive, like literally a couple plays later. He had 8 catches for 8 catches for 72 yards last week. We know how capable he is. He was a 6K basically all last season. This is probably one of the last few weeks that you'll even get him at a slight discount. He's back. He's healthy. I like it there, Snyder. I really like the call there. As far as Calvin Ridley goes, with Levis, he continued that form even despite doing it with 2 quarterbacks. It's good to see. I don't think I'm going to go to Westbrook-Ikhine at all. I kind of get the love for Titans defense. I did like what you mentioned about the Vikings, being able to bring pressure on Levis. And it kind of goes into the case in point. If you're spending up at defense today or tomorrow, you're going to be incredibly different. 3,700 for the Vikings D is projected for less than 1% ownership right now, despite going against one of the most turnover-happy quarterbacks in the NFL. And I don't usually talk a ton about, defenses, but it almost feels a little bit more important to nail it this week because of how bad or how tight the pricing is and how a group of players, you see guys like Boutte and Audric Estime being almost 30% owned. It definitely alarms some red flags for me. All right, Snyder, we're going to move on to probably one of the games of the day. I would say it's the game of the 1 o'clock games. It is Baltimore Ravens at the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Ravens last week, it was Tylan Wallace who ended up exploding there in the second half against the Bengals. You also had Rashad Bateman get into the end zone, a guy who's going to go completely overlooked by the field. It looks going to be Zay Flowers. Lamar Jackson, would you believe it? Under 2% ownership. Wow. Man, with a 26-point team total, that one has me hesitating, Snyder, because we talked about how we just want to capture the raw quarterback score almost lately. And though there have been really good cheap quarterbacks lately, a guy like Drake May is 5,600, right? Herbert was 5,200 last week. I'm just kind of throwing some comparisons out there. Last week, it felt unnecessary to get up to an 8K quarterback. And I think we were talking about Hurts and stuff going against the Cowboys. This week, the field kind of gets a little bit closer to Lamar. It almost feels like he might be one of the plays that if you get up to and you just take the raw points from him, could be worthwhile. Pickens, this is a good game for him. 7K. He's been very much in the mix with Russ as the quarterback as well. Feels like this one, despite being a good old-fashioned AFC North bloody rivalry, feels like it's got some points in it, Snyder. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of the trendy picks have been with the Steelers throughout the week on various podcasts. Everybody's saying take the Steelers plus the 3, play Russ and Pickens. I think the sneaky play in this game is actually Derrick Henry, though, 8,100. He's going to be under 5% owned, I think. Pittsburgh is allowed 20-plus DK points to RBs in 6 straight games now. And you get Henry. I know the Steelers are used to seeing Lamar, but they've never seen Lamar and Henry in the same backfield together. So I think Henry is the Millie Maker winner, I think, this week, 8,100. Going to be sub 5% owned, I think, probably. So I'm going to be heavy on Henry. I think he's going to be one of my staples in tournaments this week. So I'm going to be heavy on him at 8,100. We've seen what he can break off those long runs and such. I mean, he's hit 28-plus DK points 5 times this year. If he gets 30 on this slate at 5% owned and say Kamara and some of those other guys don't even sniff like 25 or so, I think Henry is the guy you're going to be needing. I've seen there's some books that moved to 3.5, so they're starting to see some sharper money coming in on the Ravens late. So that makes me feel a little better. But I mean, Pickens is definitely a good play. He's going to see the ownership though. 7K is starting to get up there for Pickens. I'm used to playing, in the mid to high 5Ks for Pickens earlier in the year. Now he's up to 7K. Caught a touchdown last week. He has hit the 100-yard bonus a couple times this year. 5 catches, 4 catches, 5 catches. I see there's a decent outcome where he puts up like 13 or 14 points, though. That could really bust a lot of people there. If he's going to see that much ownership, I'll probably be underweight on him. I mean, Russ, I think there's some regression coming to these Steelers. You look at the teams they've played the last 6 weeks. They've been playing some pretty bad teams, and they're going to face a good team here. So definitely this is a tough rivalry. I mean, I think the last, I don't know how many games these two teams have played, no matter how good each team is, it seems to be like a 3 or 4 point game either way. So it should be a tough game. The 48-point total is one of the highest totals I've seen in this rivalry, though. So I think there will be some points scored in this game.
Yeah, it feels weird to be talking about a Baltimore-Pittsburgh game with some points in it, right? It just doesn't fit the history of the rivalry. And it kind of, I like what you said about Henry. I do kind of agree. The Steelers are due for some regression. And as much as it pains me to say, even though I'd rather both teams lose, right? Just being a Bengals fan and stuff, I am rooting for the Ravens. Bring the Steelers closer to the pack. Run away with the division for all I care. We need the playoff spot. We need the 7 seed, right? As a Bengals fan, that's what I want. So hopefully, the Ravens take the win. I do think, though, the regression is due for the Steelers. However, this Ravens defense, man, the secondary especially, I just have a tough time getting away from what Jamar Chase did on 2 drives, right? Like just one play drives and quick drives against this Ravens team where you just get the ball and all of a sudden you score. And it just feels like it's very much in George Pickens' MO to have a huge play or two in this one. And that's where I keep kind of coming back to where, look, 14% for Pickens, I would normally scoff at, but with Russ as his quarterback, he's been very much looking his way. Yeah. Justin Fields honestly didn't really give him the time of day, right? And I'm not a Pickens sympathizer at all. I genuinely, he's probably the 8th best receiver in this division. I mean that. But when you just look at the targets, 11 targets, since Russ took up 9 targets, 5 targets, 7 targets, right? Yeah. In that time span, he's not gotten less than 74 yards, and he has a pair of touchdowns. Like, the big plays are there. Pickens, my favorite Steeler. Lamar is going to be my favorite Raven. However, Snyder, when I ran the Lamar, 5,000 teams and stuff, and I bumped Lamar up a couple points, he only appears in 2 of the top 2,000 lineups. So yeah. that is telling. And I love to do that, especially for NBA when I'd run 5,000 teams. I'm like, okay, what is this combo? How much does it hit? Or where does it rank? And sometimes if I want 2 studs together and it turns out it ranks really low, I just scrap it, right? So despite liking Lamar, if I have him projected for 24 and he's only hitting 2 out of 2,000 teams, maybe I got to rethink. And maybe it says spending down a quarterback is the move. But yeah, we'll come back to that.
I think another value that's going to be popular in this game is going to be Calvin Austin. He's another name I've heard brought up a couple of times as the trendy cheapy play. I know he's hit a couple of good games, or he scored a touchdown in 2 games this year, which has made his box score look a lot better. But there's a weird trend with the Steelers or this Ravens defense. So they get gashed on 1st and 2nd down, horribly gashed on 1st and 2nd down. 3rd down, their pass defense on 3rd downs, their pressure rate is one of the highest, and they actually do all right on 3rd down. It's just that 1st and 2nd downs, like when Jamar Chase just blitzes them over the top for 80 yards. And I don't think George Pickens is nowhere near the Jamar Chase caliber, but he could definitely hit him for at least one, I think.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. And this is a good one here, Sean. And taking any shots on Deontay. And so I really want Deontay to do well. However, what Todd Monken kind of said is, well, we got a lot of good players and no one really left. And it's kind of like, why the hell did you trade for Deontay? And I know, but Harbaugh said that he wants to get the ball to Deontay a little bit more and stuff. Yeah. You have an offense coordinator and a head coach. The offense coordinator was basically like, look, we scored 35 last week and won the game. Like, Tylen Wallace may have played more, but he also played pretty damn well. It's tough to take him off the field. So not this week. Steven, you mentioned his big Mike Williams in play. 6 routes last week. It's only going to trend up. Van Jefferson ran 24 routes. You would expect to see a little bit of that inverse. And honestly, at this point, it's not fitness related at all. It's basically just, are you fully capable or fully up to date on the playbook? And we'll see about Mike Williams. I don't think it's the worst click. And then kind of go on to your point about Calvin Austin before I move on. He had 18 routes last game, 6 targets. That's fine. That's good. I like it against the secondary, to be honest. That if he's going to be under 10%, I like it a lot more than Kayshon Boutte, who is going to profile very similar, right? We're just looking for pivots off these other really chalky players. And you can probably find more pivots who are 2-3% rather than 10% like Austin or 30% like Boutte, right? And that's the whole point of the Millie. We want to find some of these gems and we'll hopefully uncover them. Moving on, Colts, Jets. Wow, what a game. So I hate to say it, Snyder, but I had this marked down. And it was actually one of my first thoughts is Aaron Rodgers, 5,500 against one of the worst defenses in the league in the Colts. I am cautiously optimistic that he gets it going. I think we had the same convo last week with Drew, who was mentioning, being high on them against the Cardinals. I kind of see it here. Like Devontae Adams is 7,200, Garrett Wilson 7,100, Aaron Rodgers 5,500. That's super affordable. Like Breece Hall's fine at 7,500. He's going to be the highest owned Jet in this game. As far as the Colts go, well, if you've been living under a rock, it's not Joe Flacco anymore. It's Anthony Richardson. So, Snyder, I'm going to bring this to you here, right? Because I mentioned Aaron Rodgers, but I wanted to bring this one up specifically because I think Anthony Richardson is a great play. And, people will be like, oh, well, he might get benched for Flacco. Look, if he's taking the reins from Flacco, he is not getting benched. No. He's not. They would have kept Flacco out there if there was even a risk. And look, we were talking about it. Quarterback, Drake May is 16% owned. Drake May can run. He's good. I like him. It's a good spot going against the Rams. This Jets defense has sucked. I mean, there is no way around it. Kyler Murray tore him up last week. And look, I know Anthony Richardson is not great. However, you give me a running quarterback at 5,300, a guy who can get it done with his legs better than anyone, a guy who's playing for his job, playing for his career at this rate where, look, do you just want to be another guy in the NFL or do you want to be an actual NFL starter and, hopefully propel to the next level? 5,300, Snyder. I'm big on Anthony Richardson here. What about you?
I think he's fine for like the million maker and stuff in some tournaments. Yeah, I think he's got the upside that you need at pretty low ownership. Probably, probably 4 or 5% ownership. I don't know, somewhere around there probably. At 5,300, the price tag definitely helps make a lot of other things work. I definitely wouldn't play Taylor and Richardson together. I don't think I would do that, but I think he's definitely fine. You can mix some of these guys in with him. Adonai Mitchell's up to 4,400 this week.
Yeah.
Josh Downs is 6,400 now. I think I would play Richardson naked though, just based off his rushing upside. You need him to get into the box on the ground more than likely to get his upside there and have 50, 60 yards rushing. I think it's fine for a tournament. I'm not really on anything in this game as a whole though. It's kind of a cross-off game for me, but I don't mind the Anthony Richardson naked play there. Trying to find some other guys to pair with him, but I might even play some Colts defense at 2,600. I've done dumber things, but 10 points and 16 points in 2 of the last 4 games for the Colts defense at 2,600. And this Jets team, I think this Jets team is on the verge of packing up shop and going to Cabo for the summer or the winter.
Yeah, no, it's interesting too because look, this is their last stand. If the Jets lose, very much that. They've already went all in on it this year. That's the crazy part is the future looks very bleak. I don't envy being a Jets fan. I thought, this year they'd be good. It's clearly not the case. But this is very much a must win. My thing is Anthony Richardson, 100%, you're playing him naked. You're not playing him with Pittman. You're not playing him with Downs, 6,400. It's still a tough spot for wide receivers as a whole. But this is a good running back spot. The Jets can't stop the run. We know that. Jonathan Taylor's fine, but I think Anthony Richardson is very fine at 5,300. Running him naked, you don't feel the obligation to stack. And I think stacking on this slate is harder than most. This isn't, 2 or 3 weeks ago, we were just able to get a QB with a wide receiver one easily. Like, it's a little bit harder. And, a lot of people are clicking Drake May because of it. A lot of people are clicking Kayshon Boutte because of it. You give me a cheap quarterback who can get it done with the legs without the help of anyone else, sign me up. That's my big stand. He'll probably be my Millie Maker flag plant of the day as well. For the Jet side, I think you can run it back easily too. Like, you talk about a skinny, Anthony Richardson plus Garrett Wilson, Anthony Richardson plus Breece Hall. Like, that's the type of stuff I can get behind. Even though it's a gross game, I'm a big fan of it. I think Anthony Richardson should be 6K at all times. Because look, he might. This is a good one here. Like, Richardson has more fumbles than touchdowns, so I'm still on it. Yeah, it becomes, at the end of the day, he could run 80 yards, score 1 touchdown, and throw for 100 yards and have 2 interceptions, and he's still honestly almost paying off that salary. Like, that's not even an impressive stat line, right? I just hope he tucks it and runs it, and I think he will tomorrow. We'll go ahead and move on to the Browns, Saints. The Saints surprised me last week, Snyder. They surprised me, and you were on it. Yeah. You were very much on it. Them getting the upset done against the Atlanta Falcons there. There's also a big note here, too. There was an 80-yard touchdown taken off the board for Taysom Hill to start the game.
Yeah, it was.
It was a holding call on Foster Moreau that brought it back, and it ended up being a 34-yard catch for him. So, guess who ran the second most routes last week for the Saints? Taysom Hill. So you're wondering, oh, man, you must really like Taysom Hill, right? Yes, I do. I do like Taysom Hill, and I looked at his props last week, and I ended up playing him. And he ended up doing fine. He wasn't great. He was okay for the price. He's 4,500 this week. He's going to be, what's the ownership on him? 3% here. His props are always impressive. All right, and you can get some goal line touches. The problem is Dennis Allen not there. Is that really going to sustain? Who knows? He did have some carries in the first quarter last game. You also have Alvin Kamara projected to be mega chalk here as well, with a good rate projection, great floor, good solid play. I'm not going to talk bad about Alvin Kamara. Cedric Tillman. You talk about a garbage time hero. I've played him too. Like, I'm not mad at it, but he shows up in that fourth quarter. He really does. When they're down 14, when they're down 15, better call Cedric Tillman's name. Or when they beat the Ravens. Did they just beat the Ravens a few weeks ago?
A couple weeks ago, yeah. He caught that.
So he showed up in that.
Hamilton dropped the interception. The next play was 50 yards over the top.
So, right over the middle. Touchdown, Cedric Tillman. He's been getting there in the fourth quarter a lot. So that brings me to my point, 5,300, very popular play this week. What are you doing with the two most popular guys, Cedric Tillman and Alvin Kamara on this slate, and then any other guys you want to talk about?
Yeah, I kind of like the Browns a little bit more in this. The Browns have a big defensive line. A matchup against them. The Browns have the third best defensive line going up against the 26th best offensive line in the Saints. So I think there's a pretty big advantage for the Cleveland defense in this matchup. They're favored by 1 on the road at the Saints now. I actually lean to the Cleveland side in this game this week. I know I was on the Saints last week at home. I kind of like the Cleveland side this week. I like their defense at 2,600. And Cedric Tillman, like you say, he's kind of morphed into a solid receiver. I mean, he's getting the workload. When Jameis gets in chuck-it mode, I mean, he's seen over 30 targets in the last 3 weeks. So I think his upside is definitely there for another, 6-catch, 70-yard outing, maybe a touchdown in there again. So I'll be on some Tillman. I'm going to play some Jameis Tillman stacks as well. I think Jameis is a strong upside play. The Chargers have one of the best defenses in the league. I mean, if not the best. I mean, they've got a strong secondary, a strong defensive line. He struggled there last week, but I think this is a closer spot to what he saw versus the Ravens. I think the Saints defense can be had. So I do like some Jameis to bounce back this week with some Tillman. I think even Elijah Moore is in play at 4,300 for a cheaper guy. He still saw 9 targets last week. Didn't do much with them, but 12 targets against the Ravens, 9 targets last week. Jameis is looking his way, definitely. So I like some Elijah Moore with Jameis as well. I think Elijah Moore could have a similar to like an 8 for 80 game like he had against the Ravens. So I like Elijah. I like Tillman. I think Elijah Moore is going to be like very, very low owned. Like Actually, I think his ownership's starting to come up now. Him and Tillman are both coming up now. I thought it was just going to be Tillman, but more people are jumping on Moore as well, too, now it looks like. Jerry Jeudy is another guy that, Jameis is just chucking. Jerry Jeudy saw 19 targets the last 2 weeks. So I think you can run some Jameis doubles with just mix and match these Jeudy, Tillman, Moore combinations there. Judy's going to be the guy that gets left out then it looks like at 5,400. So maybe he's the better tournament play, but I'm gonna be overweight on Jameis in these doubles with those three receivers, and I'm kind of off the Saints a little bit, but Kamara 8,200. I like Henry over Kamara this week, so that's gonna be my stand. I'm gonna take the Kamara lineups, take Kamara out, and insert Henry, and that's gonna be my pivot to Kamara this week. I think Henry's got more upside than Kamara this week, and he's gonna be a lot lower owned than Kamara is going to be.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, this is interesting too. Chubb off a bye versus
I like Chubb too.
Yeah, coming off a bye, too, it takes time to get healthy. And do we get Jerome Ford back in the mix as well? Is the only red flag there, but also his injury obviously being a red flag. But if it was the time to play Chubb, you could talk me into it this week. 6K. Yeah, I think that's actually a really good tournament play because look, we know what Chubb was before. We know he hasn't looked exactly his old self, but if there was ever a time to do it, it's coming off a week rest. You're already getting comfortable. He's already taken some hits. He knows what his body is capable of as of this moment. Coming off the bye, I do like that quite a bit. 6,200.
The Saints have been torched by RBs this year too. Yeah. Almost every game they've been torched.
Yeah, you know what? Good shout there. I like that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go in. Taysom Hill. Look, 4,500. I like punt and tight end. I already mentioned that. Probably will punt tight end, but I think Taysom might be one of my favorite mid-range guys behind Hawkinson, who we mentioned earlier. I can see why 2 tight end builds are popping a little bit because look, you have the value, but you also have the mid-tier. Like Hawkinson is probably one of the few guys on the slate mispriced. Or you could argue he should be 1K more, right? Yeah, you looked like his old self last week, right? Taysom Hill, not exactly mispriced or anything like that, but does have 20-point upside and does have goal line carry upside and stuff which is just rare, and ran a lot of routes last week, which is always the big thing. Raiders, Dolphins. So Snyder, you want to hear a fun story? I laddered Jalen Waddle last week. I laddered him. He had 2 catches for 56 yards in the first quarter, the first drive.
Yeah.
He ended with under 60 yards. So I hit his over under. I'm like, yeah, let's go. We're gonna make some money today. No, and then this just shows me this Dolphins team outside of A-Chain, it's really tough to predict. Even Tyreek Hill, very tough to predict. Dolphins defense, very very popular play. 3K, 14% ownership going against the Raiders, who have been very very bad offensively. A-Chain 23% is the most popular option in this game. You go to the Raiders side of the ball, Jacoby Myers not far behind, 23% as well. He's been very good over the last 2 weeks. Brock Bowers, who I think is very similar workload and stuff. The targets are even in Bowers' favor and stuff. 5,800 there, 6%. This is how you know a slate is almost broken. How is Gardner Minshew projected for 4.5%, 5%, and Richardson is projected less than that? That makes no sense to me. Why would you click Gardner Minshew's name, especially against a Dolphins defense that is honestly good? I don't think badly of the Dolphins defense. Their offense, when they have the back quarterbacks and stuff, has held them back. And even Tua and Tyreek really hasn't been himself either all that much. But, man, I'm not clicking Gardner Minshew's name tomorrow at all. Bowers and Myers make sense. Miami side, it's really just A-Chain in their defense. What do you think, Snyder?
Yeah, last week's Dolphins game was kind of weird, just how that game went with the Rams. The Rams didn't even push them at all. It was just kind of like a stagnant game after the first quarter. Kind of held a chain back last week too, but I think a chain's in a much better spot than Kamara as well. So I'm going to play him over Kamara as well. I think he's one of the better plays on the board at 7,200. I think he's a guy that could be priced at 8K with the upside we've seen from him. With Tua this year, he's averaging 24 DK points a game with Tua this year. And he's hit 23 plus DK points 9 of 14 games, I think, this year. Or I think that was right. Or four games. Basically, with Tua, he's been crushing it. So 7,200. I think Achane's one of the best plays on the slate. At home, 7-point favorite against one of the worst teams in the league in the Raiders. So, yeah, I think he's a home run play. He'll be one of my highest owned guys on the slate. I do like running it back with Jacoby Myers at 5,600. I think he is a strong volume play. I was on him quite a bit this year when he's been healthy. He's been back 2 games now, 17 and 21 DK points in the last 2 games, 14 catches in those 2 games. I think he's got the upside to put up 20 in this spot again, too. I think they're going to be trailing and forced to throw for the majority of this game. So I like Jacoby Myers at 5,600. One of my favorite mid-range plays on the slate this week. And then I think this is a great spot for Jonnu Smith. The Raiders have been horrible against tight ends this year, and I think Jonnu Smith is the guy that Tua looks to often. I think he's a good play under 4K this week. We've seen him put up 20 once this season, so I like Jonnu Smith at lower ownership under 4K for the Dolphins as well. So Achane, Smith, and then Jacoby are my favorite plays in this game. Tyreek, you can always play. I mean, the price tag is still down there, 7,400 for the upside that he possesses. So, I mean, it only takes a couple plays for him to put up a 30 spot in this game. So, I think he's a guy you got to have some interest into at least.
Yeah, so your point about Achane, especially with Tua being the guy there, right? Like when he's in, they do a lot of stuff around the line of scrimmage for Achane, and there's a lot of short throws. It's lateral to line of scrimmage, but it still counts as a catch, and that matters on DraftKings. That matters when he's averaging 5-6 catches a game. Like his catch prop the other night was 5.5 against the Rams, and we know how effective he's their number 1 leading carrier. Like he's cleared Mostert. He's got to worry about Jalen Wright now. So Achane definitely my favorite. Very affordable at 7,200 on this slate. Like, yeah, I think I'd rather him than Alvin Kamara. You could argue that just straight up, but also that 1,000 in salary matters. Yeah. And Achane, his floor, especially on DraftKings, is good. You saw the floor last week. This week is a much better spot. The Raiders have been just terrible all around. Big fan of Achane here. You mentioned Jonnu Smith. I like that. 3,800, not the worst click at all. Yeah, I think I'm just looking at Myers and stuff. It's a bad spot. I mean, I tried to find what do you want to target against against the defense, right? And that's one thing that I do for Showdown and stuff. Every time I look at the Dolphins, I'm like, man, they're above average in mostly everything. And I just don't know about Jacoby Myers. I mean, it's a fine price, don't get me wrong, but it's not something that I'm getting excited for. I'd rather have Bowers just straight up, I think. All right, so let's go to the new look Chicago Bears. And the new look, I mean that Shane Waldron got fired. So no more excuses for you, Caleb Williams. I can't stand watching Bears games. And I mention this every time. People are probably sick of me saying I love Roschon Johnson. He barely gets any touches, but also just these guys in general. DJ Moore doesn't get the ball enough. Ramo Dunze, Keenan Allen, they just look awful. And so the fact that Shane Waldron is gone is probably a few weeks too late anyway. I don't know. I don't know what to expect, Snyder. They didn't really give us much at all in the coach speak either. This is a Chicago Bears team with a mediocre team total. It's 18. It's actually a bad team total, to be honest. Is the offensive line the issue? Was it Shane Waldron? What can we expect? I don't know. And honestly, I don't really want to find out. 11% for Swift seems right. If he was 3-4%, you're talking about a monopoly of the carries and stuff. I like it. Green Bay can get torched by running backs. He's probably the only click I care for on the Bears. And maybe you can talk me in on the Bears defense, 2,400. But as far as these other skill positions go, I don't know. I mean, DJ Moore is the cheapest we're going to see him all season, 6K. Maybe you could talk me in on that. And then on the Packers side of the ball, it's very similar. It's Josh Jacobs, and then it's everyone else. And he's the only guy with projected ownership. Tucker Kraft is 4,400. Luke Musgrave no longer being in the picture. Kraft is probably a decent click there. But you have 4 wide receivers who can make their case. So this just becomes a game where it's just so gross with the amount of factors, the amount of good players there can be on both sides. I mean, even the Bears have a lot of talent individually. We just haven't seen as a team. But overall, it just feels like one that's just lackluster for DFS. Right, Snyder?
Yeah, I really, really don't like this game at all for DFS. We got a low total in this game, too. It's a division game. I tried to make Caleb Williams work a couple weeks ago. That was a disastrous click. Not going to try that again. So I think this is just a throwaway game for me. I think you can click on Tucker Kraft there at 4,400. I think that's a fine tight end play there at that price tag for the upside that he does hold. So maybe it's Kraft, and that's about it for me in this game to make this one short. But I don't like much at all here.
Yeah, and this comes into the point too, where look, if you wanted to gamble on the Bears, offense looking way better, this is your chance. Okay, like I will make the case for that. Like Shane Waldron was 100% the problem. Give me Caleb Williams. Give me DJ Moore. Give me a double stack with Moore, Odunze, and Caleb Williams. You know what? I'm not even cracking 17K of spending. You can make the case for that, right? Like I think that's like the one thing that I can kind of see the picture for. Otherwise, screw this game. Kraft. I mean, even Jacobs, I don't really love. So, yeah, I honestly like just saving time on this one. If anyone has a different take, throw it into the chat. I'll display it on there while we talk about Falcons and the Broncos. So this gets us into the point of Audric Estime. Very much the hot hand last week. And I do think you want to be careful when you're picking Sean Payton's running backs because it would not shock me at all. He's like, oh, we want to get Audric Estime the ball more and stuff like that. I think his coach speak index rating is 50%. It's one of the worst in the NFL. He does not mean it when he says he wants to give the ball to Audric Estime more. He means whoever gets the ball and does something with it better than anyone else to start the game, they'll continue getting the run. Last week, that was Audric Estime. He had a lot of carries, did fine. Falcons are a decent matchup. Sure, I get the case for him. He was the guy last week. My problem with Audric Estime, and this is why he's one of my least favorite plays on the entire slate just in general, I think he's a good fade. It would not shock me if Javonte Williams and Jaleel McLaughlin both out-touched him, right? If you just looked at it, I don't love either one of those guys, but that's the case against Audric Estime is, look, we saw it with the Broncos last year. They like to play 3 dudes. There is no guarantee that Estime even sees 6 carries, let alone a huge projection that some sites give them. Snyder, that's my Estime rant. Anyone else in this game? I mean, Bijan's been on fire. London's been great. I mean, there's a lot of other guys to talk about, but I had to get that Estime thing off my chest.
Yeah, for sure. I'm kind of off the Falcons in this spot. I kind of like the Broncos. I've been backing them a few times this year. I think there's some validity in continuing playing some Bo Nix in tournaments at home. I think Cortland Sutton has definitely been very consistent, and he's still in that 5K range. So I like playing Sutton. So I'm going to keep playing him. He's been 15 plus DK points in the last 4 games, 13 plus DK points in 6 of the last 7 games. So he's coming off of 3 straight strong performances too. He's averaging over 20 points a game in the last 3 weeks. So I think Cortland Sutton's a guy that you definitely have to have in your pool. Once again, I think this Atlanta defense is definitely attackable. Short home favorites here for the Broncos. So in on some Cortland. I may play some Bo Nix. I would definitely pair him up with Cortland Sutton there. I'm kind of off of the Falcons as a whole in this game, though. We got a lower total, kind of. I don't like to play Atlanta on the road outside of the dome either, so that kind of gives me pause there. And Estime is a difficult decision. I think he's very highly touchdown dependent, I think, because he really doesn't have much of a passing game role at all. He hasn't caught a pass at all this year. Had 14 carries for 53 yards last week. I think we could see something similar to that again. Maybe he gets you 5 to 8 points or something, unless he gets in the end zone. Then he's got that upside to hit that 12 to 17 point game or something like that. I think I'm going to be under on Estime at this moment, but I'll have to dig into it a little more and hear what some of the other guys have to say on the shows tomorrow as well. But I'll have some Bo Nix, and then I'm going to have Sutton definitely in the pool.
Yeah, and the thing with me is that Sean Payton is a snake, and I don't trust him. And if he tells me that Audric Estime is going to get more carries, I don't believe him. And I don't think it's right to believe him either. He has given you no reason to believe what he says. I'm sure that he didn't tell Greg Williams to purposely injure guys in his time in New Orleans either. So this is my thing, though. I think it's one of my least favorite plays. That's my big stand on this slate, too, is just Anthony Richardson being well owned, but Audric Estime being bad chalk. And you're right. You're going away from the dome. The Atlanta Falcons are. It's not like Kirk Cousins is, just dynamite in terms of, getting outside the pocket, making plays or whatever. These guys are high priced. 6,500, 6,700, 7,800 for Bijan. It becomes very tough to stack them at that rate. And the team total, like I know, just 4 points, but you look at the Bears, right? And no ownership, but it's like a 4-point team total difference. Like, I think I'd rather stack up, those type of teams where it's a little bit cheaper. It's a little bit more dynamic of a quarterback, of a guy like Caleb Williams, and that's not even an advertisement for the Bears. It's more of I would say a smear campaign against the Falcons, I think would be the best word for it. But yeah, you summed it up. I don't think I need to add more to that one. Weather's not bad. I don't think there's even a weather game tomorrow, Rance. I think most games are actually pretty good football weather for the most part. And Richie Small, I missed this one, but Hill less than 5% got to play him. And he looked like a decoy out there, especially in that first half against the Rams. And that was a bad defense they were going against. Like Tyreek, I genuinely think he's hurt, and like it's going to hinder him for the rest of the season. And hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully he proves me wrong, or whatever. That it just concerns me.
Yeah.
Snyder, you ready for my top owned guy out of 2,000 teams? Who ended up hitting my lineups the most? It's Christian McCaffrey. 28-point team total going against the Seahawks here. Seahawks defense notoriously bad this season. Also hitting my teams at a very high clip. Jawan Jennings and Brock Purdy, and then Kenneth Walker sneaks his way in there. 3 guys projected for double-digit ownership in this one. A.J. Barner at 3,100. Christian McCaffrey at 8,300. And then Kenneth Walker at 7K. Noah Fant still out for this one. A.J. Barner is that is why he is chalk. And honestly, I saw him catch a ball last week when I was watching. I didn't even check his final stat line at all. So if he did have a good game, I'm oblivious to it. But he does have a very decent projection for 3,100. And yeah, I just kind of wanted to check what he did last week. So last week, Snyder, he did 3 catches. Wait, could be wrong. Hold on. 4 catches for 27 yards. I can be talked in on Barner a little bit. I like that. What do you think about this game, though, overall?
Yeah, I think this is a great spot for McCaffrey here. The last 3 games, Seattle's played away from their home building. RBs have just smoked them. I mean, 28-plus DK points in the 3 road matchups for Seattle. You're getting McCaffrey here, who played all but 8 snaps last week. I was kind of surprised to see that much workload thrown on him right away, but with him coming back, with how careful they were with him leading up to that, I knew he had to have been 100% once they finally brought him back. Much better spot for him at home as a good touchdown favorite here. I think McCaffrey at 8,300 is still 1K underpriced here, so you're getting a really good price on him still. They only raised this price $300. I know on FanDuel they jacked it up a lot more over on FanDuel, but a DK only kept this price at 8,300. So I think this is the last chance we have to play McCaffrey at under 9K potentially this year. So definitely in on McCaffrey. I think he's a strong play. I think you could play the San Francisco defense with him if you want. 3,600 is kind of getting up there a little bit in price, but we've seen Geno make some mistakes and such. I'm not sure I'll spend up for them, though, but that's definitely like a million maker pairing you could go. I think some people are going to get to the Geno stacks here with the trailing script. I mean, they should be forced to throw a lot. So I think you could see some Geno ownership kind of spike as the cards get turned over tomorrow. Brock Purdy's another guy that's rating out well in the models and such. He's got a good projection as well. I'm going to lean into the McCaffrey side here. I think, I'm not sure what to think of these receivers. I played Ricky Pearsall last week. He had the 1 touchdown early, but he really didn't do much throughout the middle of that game. Only had the 4 catches. I think I'll go back to him some, though. I mean, the price tag's still under 5K, so I like the upside that Ricky brings for under 5K, so I'll have some of him. I think Jennings saw a bunch of work last week. Still got a fair price tag on him, so I think he's fine as well. And then with Kittle being priced at 6K, questionable, I think I may be off of him. I think I like the cheaper tight ends this week, as salary's a lot more strict this week. I'd rather pay up for the other guys and kind of save at tight end, I think.
So my biggest miss of the best ball season has to be Jawan Jennings. And we also knew like the possibility of Ayuk being traded and stuff like that. That's why Jennings was being drafted, but also the fact that he's just good. Jennings has looked really good every time he gets the rock. And it's been that way since the Super Bowl too. You're like, damn, Jennings is like a legit wide receiver too.
Yeah.
And I know he's in a great offense too. Kyle Shanahan stuff like schemes him open, but like 5,300, still good. Ricky Pearsall also looked really good. Like it's just something about Kyle Shanahan where he can make anyone look really good. But like those guys in particular are popping off the page a little bit. And like, look, Brock Purdy 6,600. It's a little bit tougher to get to in this slate. But like I can see stacking up San Francisco at all times. It's like a team that you would put up 35 and you wouldn't bat an eye. You can stack them with the running back. You can stack them with 2 wide receivers. Like you have that flexibility with Purdy, and that's why he's always so appealing to me. AJ Barner, like the one thing I got to note, 49ers are one of the best teams against the tight ends, right? Like that's kind of a red flag, just for his sake. But this 49ers defense is not invincible. Like you just saw what Baker Mayfield was able to do last week and stuff. Like I could see DK Metcalf is cheap, 6,500. Yeah. Like he's a guy where you're talking about upside and stuff. I want to say it was Thanksgiving last year, Snyder, that DK Metcalf torched the 49ers. And I could be wrong. Yeah, but like I want to say he had like 30 fantasy points, whatever. He had a couple big plays. I could be wrong, but like that's the type of stuff I remember with DK Metcalf. And like you're gonna tell me he's completely unknown at 6,500? You'd be clicking DK Metcalf at 6,500 all day. So that's another one of my favorite tournament plays. I think I keep saying it, like tight pricing. However, there's guys who are underpriced. DK Metcalf, 6,500. He was like 7,500 all season, it feels, right? And again, I'm not 100%, I'm just kind of talking, maybe it's hyperbole, but yeah, there's guys who are underpriced in this mid-range who have a ton of upside. I think you could target upside specifically on this slate, and you could be fine. All right, let's go to the 4 o'clock game of the day. I mean, this one, it's a battle of the heavyweights here. It's the Chiefs and Bills. There's a few heavyweights in the AFC. However, the Chiefs are frauds. We both know that. Like, we both know the Chiefs are frauds, right? Like on the road in Buffalo. Give me Buffalo all day. But the good news for Chiefs fans, and I don't mean that it's disrespect. I mean, obviously he's a Ravens fan, I'm a Bengals fan. I hate the Chiefs. I'm really glad that they blocked the field goal, though, against the Broncos. Brings the Broncos closer to the playoff pack. But Travis Kelce, it sucked cheering for the Chiefs for that reason. But Travis Kelce looks like his old self, 6,300. The most chalky tight end, I think 24%. I think it's the highest owned of any tight end that we have seen yet. Curtis Samuel also projected for chalk, 16%. There was good coach speak on him. He's 3,300 as well, talking about getting him the ball. It's another guy, though. It's a really low projection. Like, you don't need to play chalky 3,300 guys, especially guys who are very, I would say, random in Curtis Samuel's case. Like, his touches can be boom or, bust. And it's just always a little bit frustrating of a player because I bet his props earlier this year, and it was not fun. And that was even in a game where, he should have gotten a bump. The big news here, though, Dalton Kincaid out. That's why a guy like Curtis Samuel is also popping just a little bit. He also gets the boost of Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper is going to be in for this one, it looks. Okay, interesting. DeAndre Hopkins, chalky a little bit, 10% ownership is what it's projected. Khalil Shakir, same way. Slater, I keep saying this, though. Like, Chiefs games have a real big tendency to underwhelm. What do you see in this one? Because I really want your take on this game because, honestly, outside of Kelce, I don't love it.
Yeah, we got 2 heavyweights going at it right here. Love watching this matchup. It's always a good close matchup here. Mahomes as an underdog is, I think, 11-1-1, I think, against the spread as an underdog. So he's really tough. Rarely is an underdog. But like Kelce, like you were saying, the last 5 times or last 6 times he's played the Bills, his floor has been 14, and he's put up 22-plus points in 3 of the last 4 matchups. So the Bills know what's coming, but Kelce still seems to get his work. So I think Kelce is definitely a guy, especially in the afternoon slate. I think he's a guy you almost need to lock in there if you're playing that. 6,300. You can find ways to get up there. I know I just said I didn't want to spend up for Kittle, but I think Kelce is kind of one of those 2 tight end builds. So you just plug him in there kind of as a receiver with another cheapy tight end. So I'll be playing him in some of those type of builds. And then this Kansas City team is just kind of tough. They just win games. I mean, they just somehow just win games. I mean, it's not always perfect. This offense hasn't looked the best this year from a fantasy standpoint. So it's kind of tough to target this game just because, Mahomes is going to get there. But I think he's only put up 20 points maybe once or twice this year from a fantasy standpoint. Once this year he's put up over 20 points. That was against Tampa Bay a couple weeks ago. So I won't be playing Mahomes at 6,800. Josh Allen at 7,800 always has the upside there. He's going to have to use the legs more in this matchup. Spags is going to be throwing everything at him, so I think I look for more of like last week against the Colts. He had 8 for 50 on the ground. I think we're going to need to see more of that from Josh Allen this week. 7,800. It is kind of tough to fit him in there, but the upside's right there. I don't want to play James Cook. Kansas City's too good against the run, so I'll be off of James Cook for sure. Kareem Hunt at 6,700 is fine. He's been getting it done. I was kind of waiting to see if there was going to be a drop-off with him. I know he was really good out of the gates when he had all that energy. I'm just kind of waiting to see if there's a drop-off coming. I know last week he only had 35 yards rushing, but he's getting there in the passing game when he's not getting there on the ground. So he's at least scoring. He scored a touchdown in 4 of the last 5 games, and then he caught 7 passes last week to make up for the touchdown he didn't get. So he's a guy you probably should consider in the pool, but I don't know if I'll get there. This game is a great game viewing-wise. I just don't know what to do from a DFS standpoint yet, though, because there's just a lot of guys outside of Kelsey I'm just unsure of in this game.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing is unsure, right? Uncertainty. And it really revolves around the large group of guys, especially for Buffalo and Kansas City, who can really get the job done. Like, at least with Kansas City, Travis Kelce has been their leading guy over the last 3 weeks. Hopkins can be mixed in a little bit, and Hunt's going to get the carries. However, you still have guys like Noah Gray, Justin Watson, Juju's back this week as well. And, it becomes a little bit of a mess in that sense. And then for Buffalo, Dawson Knox, he's 3,500. I don't like that. Dawson Knox is fine in a vacuum and stuff. 3,500, there's easily just being used as a blocker for most of those plays. I mean, that's been his MO for the last 2 season and a half since Dalton Kincaid arrived. And even the year before that, he wasn't that great. So I don't know. I'm not very thrilled.
You like Matt Collins? That was the guy I was going to mention for Buffalo. That's the guy I like the most on the Buffalo. I was going to get your opinion on that. Under 4K for him.
So I'm always a big fan of Matt Collins, but the problem is it's going to take we get Amari Cooper whose status is still up in the air, right? It would take him being out, and then even then, I'm not getting any Matt Collins really. 3,800, and this could change though. You could easily project him for 9, and you get a lot of him. So this comes into the case in point where it's a tough matchup against Kansas City secondary. However, every time you watch the Bills, it is Matt Collins getting targets. He genuinely gets the 3rd most targets on his team. That's a fact. It's just something that he's always going to be targeted heavily, and this is why I kind of lean him over Dawson Knox too in a very similar price range. Last week he ran the most routes out of anyone, 35. He had 4 targets last time out. Curtis Samuel had 8. So this is why people are getting on Curtis Samuel and stuff. Well, Snyder, I'm going to walk this Curtis Samuel take back real quick. I didn't realize he ran 34 routes last week. I actually thought I was looking at week 9, wasn't I? Yeah, week 9. I think I had that up there. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, Curtis Samuel. I thought he had 11, but Curtis Samuel ran 34 routes last week. Man, that is intriguing. 8 targets as well. That's something I think it's going to take me until the morning. It's going to take Amari Cooper news to hit as well, and maybe the plan on him. That'll be something that I am very much monitoring, but I'm going to walk that Curtis Samuel take back. All right, Snyder, that's the end of it. Let's go ahead and get our top plays of the day under 8% owned. I'm going to go first, so I'll give you time to find yours because I think I already know mine. I do know mine. So we talked about how Anthony Richardson being 5,300, right? This is my big stand. There's a lot of bad quarterbacks getting a little bit of ownership. Hell, Gardner Minshew is projected a higher ownership than Anthony Richardson. I have zero fear of him being benched for Joe Flacco. If he's going to get given the starting job back, he is going to take it and hopefully run with it. And I mean that literally and figuratively. I hope he runs the ball a lot. The Jets defense has looked really bad over recent weeks. You're not going to beat him through the air, especially in Anthony Richardson's case. But I do see plenty of rushes in his future. A 20-point team total is not the worst. And at 5,300, you can run him naked. Anthony Richardson is my Millie Maker play of the day. Snyder, who is yours?
Love it. I'm gonna go with a guy that's hit 28 DK points 5 of the last 8 games. He scored a touchdown in every single game this year. I'm gonna go with the big dog, Derrick Henry at 8,100. I think Derrick Henry is gonna put up a 30 spot in this matchup at 5% ownership and crush the Kamara ownership. So I like Derrick Henry this week at 8,100.
Perfect. Derrick Henry and Anthony Richardson, the 2 Millie Maker plays of the day under 8%. Thank you all for watching. Have a great rest of your night watching UFC, college football, or whatever you decide to choose. And bye-bye from Snyder and I. Have a good one.